you're clearly a family man. You clearly like, the kids is like, that's your life now. And like,
Right.
you're a dad, that's a big part of your identity now, which I respect the hell out of that just because I have a couple of kids.
Right.
Anytime I'm sitting around other parents that have like had a ton more experience than I have, I'm always selfishly asking some questions. So talk to me about some parenting.
I mean, really, I've had a kind of a trial and error type upbringing. I lost my mom in 2008 to cancer. And then, through losing her is when I kind of mended the relationship with my dad. So a lot of stuff growing up was kind of trial and error because I didn't really have too much to lean back on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I saw things early on with drugs and abuse that stuck with me to this day and knew that, those weren't going to be paths that I took. So with my kids, I just try to, be real and open and upfront with them. They're 12 years old now, and then I have a 2-year-old as well. But, we had the cannabis talk at 8. I put them to bed one night and I was down by the pool, having my little nightcap joint. And I guess they looked through the window and see me. Next day they come downstairs like, Dad, you're smoking cigarettes. You know what it's going to do to your lungs. And I'm just like, oh shit, here's the moment of truth. Do I say I'm smoking a cigarette or do I tell them what I was really doing? And, I just chose the truth. And I told them, it's not a cigarette, it's a joint. What's a joint? I'm like, all right, then they're really starting to ask me questions. I'm like, Daddy plays basketball. My knees hurt, my ankles hurt, my back hurts. I don't like to take medicine because medicine makes my stomach hurt. I don't drink alcohol. So when I smoke a joint, it takes the pain away, allows me to sleep, focus, and just, be a better person. And they're just like, okay. And then one of the twins is like, well, Dad, my ankle hurts. When can I smoke? So I'm like, oh shit. But like I said, to me, it's because the internet, we didn't have the internet and the access that our children are going to have. So to me, I would rather teach them, maybe I'd introduce them something that some can say is too early, but at least it's an introduction. So when I know I have to come back to it, we've had this conversation. So whether it be cannabis, whether it be women, whether it be lying, any of this kind of stuff, like I'm just really up and open with these boys because I want them to have an open line of communication with me. Like I said, I don't have any control of when they're not with me, what they're looking at or what their friends are telling them. So I want to have some morals and principles and, foundational stuff that is going to stick with them. And then, like I said, when we come across those roadblocks, hopefully it'll be an easier conversation.
Yeah. And kids have that natural intuition too, like they can tell, right? They can tell if like,
a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah, exactly. They're picking up on those, like maybe those little social cues, and that's why I think a lot of parents struggle with their kids not trusting them because well, you've lied to them their whole life. Like you're telling them it's a cigarette when it's not a cigarette. You're telling them that drinking's bad when you're like drinking a beer.
Right. Or it's too strict. And that's one thing that and one thing about my parents were obviously we had rules, and I was scared to death of my dad, so I rarely broke them. But they gave me the freedom to kind of make choices as long as I was able to check in. They would let me do things as long as I can check in. And on the counter, I went to school with, like I said, predominantly white kids. They were super strict, would get on punishment, would not be able to do this, not be able to do that. And then as we got junior, senior year, you start seeing them mess with coke and pop pills and cut school and all this kind of stuff that I've kind of been hip to for such a long time growing up in it. I would, if they asked me my input, I would say something, but to each his own. So I saw a lot early that kept me from, once I got a little bit of freedom, jumping off the edge, quote unquote. And, I lost friends that were super talented in sports, particularly baseball, with kids, parents being so strict that once they got some freedom, they went crazy. They couldn't, they had, developed habits, whether it be an opioid addiction or a cocaine problem that really robbed them from promising, Major League Baseball, futures. So, like I said, I think it's a double-edged sword, and, being able to have that open line of communication with your kids now more than ever is important.
I approach this stuff as a parent.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask, because you were a parent doing To Catch a Predator.
Yeah.
So, I know for me doing my show for the last 3 years, it's hard not to be paranoid because it is the least suspecting people. It's like you said, there's a New York firefighter, there's police officers.
Yeah, we've had clergy come into our sting operations.
Yeah. How did you navigate that as a parent where you're like, you want to let your kids still have a normal childhood, but also you've seen what's on air, but you've also seen in the investigations.
Well, we watched it together, and to me, part of parenting is tricking your kid into doing what you want them to do without them, and let them think it's their idea.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, I wish I had thought it up myself, but I borrowed it from my parents' age. But I don't remember being overly paranoid about it. I mean, there were boys doing boys stuff, and you know, I always tried to lead by example as best as I could, and have them a part of the process. I mean, they're in the business now. One's behind the camera, one's in front of the camera. So really? They're doing their own thing now. They're 31 and 28. And, I mean, there's one funny story that, you know, one of my youngest son at the, you know, early stages of Facebook, they created a fan page for a teacher, and it was a Catholic school, and they had a statue of Christ in there, and they made some fun of the teacher, and they got in trouble for it. Mm-hmm. And so I get a call from the headmistress of the school, and I'm panicky because I'm in a car headed to the airport, and it's, you know, why is the head of the school calling? And she says, there's something about your son. And I said, what happened? He goes, I said, is everybody okay? Yeah, it's okay. But they created a Facebook. I go, oh no, what did they do? And so they, you know, Mr. So-and-so was great. And it should have been a situation where Mr. So-and-so made him run 5 laps on the football field and get done with it, but instead it elevated into this big thing. And you learned this lesson, but you know, that in terms of online stuff, we were very fortunate that that's about as serious as it does. That's
very devious.
Yeah. But again, sinister sinister as it was, but we were in the early stages of this. Now, stuff was going on, right? And I'm sure there's stuff that happened that I don't know about as a parent that, you know, even being an investigative reporter, that was kept, you know, swept under the rug for me at the time, but as so many times happens. But I think, you know, it got more difficult to navigate right after those years. Because when we were doing Predator, you know, they were young, but, you know, they had enough of a kind of a watchdog over them between parents that, you know, I don't think anything serious happened.
I was listening to a couple of your podcast episodes, just trying to prepare for this one. And it was the one that you brought your son on to talk before Rob Lowe.
Yeah, that's right.
And I found his answers to be just like when I heard his age, I had to go back and be like, how old was this kid again? Because his answers were just really, really good and super thoughtful. And it also blew my mind that at the end of it, you made sure to say, like, look, we did not have a conversation prior to this. This is all him. Like, we didn't script this and nothing. Right? Because I do have some parent friends who, you know, their kids would come on stage or they'll get on their podcast, but it's all scripted. They want them to sound awesome or whatever. So I really respected that you just said, like, let him talk. Yeah. But also his answers were amazing. So a couple questions selfishly, sorry guys, on my end, as a father. Yeah. What do you do in order to instill that desire? Because he obviously has a desire to go learn things himself without you having to like push him to be like, go do this, go do that.
Ooh, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but you can't.
Okay.
You know, I got 3 kids. They're all different. I'm a crazy, intense entrepreneur. I've got one kid that wants to be a philosophy professor. It doesn't work that way. For whatever reason, you can't transfer your desires to your kids. And when you do, I think when you try really hard, you can get them to fake it for a little while, but then they rebel, as we've all seen. For me, I was a very high intensity dad. I felt like I could feel like I was winning if I do great dad stuff. And I'll give you a perfect example when this started, and actually sort of set the tone for the rest of my life. This one incident is I had all 3 kids. They were under 6 at the time. My wife wasn't feeling great. We were supposed to go to the beach. She's like, I'm not going to the beach. So let's find something else to do. I was like, oh, but the kids want to go to the beach. So I decided to take all 3 of them to the beach by myself. Not an easy thing as a dad and kids that young. I had 2, 4, and 6, I think. Maybe even younger. Oof. So as I'm driving there, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be torture. And then I just remember thinking to myself, you know what? What if Jeff Probst had showed up at the parking lot and said, okay, you're on Kid Survivor, and your job for the next 3 hours is to take these kids to the water, get them, have fun, feed them, bring them back, clean them up, and have a great time. And if you do that, you win the prize. Could I rally if it was a contest? Yeah. If there was a big prize on the line. And I was like, I totally could do that. So for the next 3.5 hours, I was competing as if there was $1 million on the line. Yeah. Chasing these kids around, get them in the water, changing, having food, making jokes, having fun, like doing fun stuff, like just having the time of my life. And I don't remember if I was having fun doing this stuff, but I know I was like feeling kind of accomplished, you know, like if you're doing a Tough Mudder run, you'd be like, yeah, I just got a great time. I'm crushing this, right? Well, as a caveman, that I could do that. So I'm loading these kids back up in the car, And these two women come over and they're like, I'm sorry, we don't mean to interrupt, but we've been watching you all day. And we just have to say, you were like the greatest dad we've ever seen. That was amazing watching you. We just couldn't resist. And I was just like, yeah, yeah. So I started developing that habit of, hey, I go to work. Hey, I come home. Like if I'm going to go dad mode, it's like out comes the cape.
Full out, yeah.
And I treat
Phil Dunphy dad.
Yeah,
mode.
and I feel like, okay, we're going to crush it. So that was good. But there's a trade-off for that. Okay. My dad did not wake up every day trying to figure out how to make me happy. Okay. My dad couldn't care less what I was going through on a day-to-day basis if it was just normal teenage stuff, right? Like his job was to educate me, prepare me, all those things for life. I'm in the mode of let's make this kid's life as easy as possible. Now, there's some great things to that. If you met my oldest son, you'd be like, he is the nicest, kindest, most generous, amazing kid ever. Not likely he'll be the next Steve Jobs. Not likely he's going to be Elon Musk because he just hasn't been born with that fear of failure, of tough love, of figure it out for yourself or else. He will not be like, if I don't get a job, I can't eat.
Yeah.
Like there's a gift to poverty. There's a gift to hard times that parents today will not be able to give their kids. Now, I don't know what that's going to manifest itself, but your best chance is just get lucky.
Yeah.
Do the best you can and get lucky.
Shoulder type of a,
yeah. And some people need that, you know, that's what propelled me in a lot of ways. It's probably what propelled you, but I've lost that with my kids and you'll probably lose that with yours because that's the way our society is now.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So good luck.
Yeah. Appreciate that, man. Yeah.
I feel like that is the constant struggle as a mom is trying to find that balance of obviously the kids still take my priority and everything, but it's very important for me to have a career that I'm proud of. So obviously you've done an incredible job at balancing those two. And I would just want to, some input on that, on how you've chosen to do that. Do you have certain checks and balances for yourself that you give yourself with your kids at a certain amount of time? Just how do you navigate all of that?
I don't balance. I juggle. You got to know what you are. I'm a juggler. So there's a couple things that I do. Number one is, I've also included the children into what it is that I do, what Papa does, who we are as a family. We want to help people. We want to make a difference for the better. This is what we do. Sometimes we work late hours. We're not here for certain things. Sometimes, but when you allow us to be gone, do you realize that you're actually contributing to the people that we help? Because when you're not pulling me, I can be there and we're helping change the world, and we get to be superheroes. Do you want to be a superhero? Yes. Okay. Well, this is how you can contribute rather than the perception of we're leaving you or you're not there. You understand that if you're staying home and guarding the fort and taking care of that, you're contributing, you're helping people by doing that for us. So they understand that they're actually contributing in their role, even if their role is being left behind.
Yeah.
So it's multiple conversations like that. So they're bought in. Then it's also, where I prioritize, if I'm, the jugglers that you see at the circus that have the chainsaw, the ping pong, the tennis ball, like I'm doing all of those, right?
Yeah.
And so when I throw them up, I just focus on the one that's about to land in my hand. So the one that's about to land in my hand is the one that gets the priority. And, and sometimes I throw up, like, let's say the kids, right? But the business lands in my hand right here because that's the one that's most important at that time. Yeah. Not in life. Of course, my children are more important in life, but you have to distinguish when is your child bored and just wants attention and at that part, you have to skillfully, be willing to pass them off to the nanny and not feel guilty about that because you've hired somebody that you trust in that role who's going to do an amazing job to take care and to distract them. Now, when you owe family time, I always know when I owe family time. I can feel it. I can see it. The kids start fighting. Things start getting a little out of control. Then my business has to take a back seat because I'm catching the family hat or the ball, whatever you want to call that. I have to focus on that to get it good, viable. Okay, it's good again. Let me throw it up. And now I got to catch the business. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Or now I got to handle Grant and I got to put all this aside. But it only depends on what is most eminent at the moment. It's like putting out the fire, what needs to be handled. And lastly, I don't compare myself to other people. That's when I get into trouble. Like when I get this idea that it all has to be balanced, I get the idea. I don't know what you get, but I'm a visual person. When I have the idea that I'm supposed to be balanced, I think everything's supposed to be smooth. I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be running this perfect show. And then I look at my life, which is chainsaws, tennis balls, ping pongs, basketballs, and it's going like this. And I go, oh my God, something's terribly wrong with me because I don't have humana balance. And I just accept that I'm not humana balance. Go get that from whoever does that. I don't do that. I do what I do really well. I'm not going to compare my picture to you. I just know that I'm like when Cirque du Soleil calls and they need the juggler, that's me. I'm the best at that, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any certain then like actual like measurable things that you try and hit every month? Like, do you have a certain amount, like do you guys go on weekly date nights? Obviously your lives are crazy, but do you try and do any of that or one-on-one time with each of your daughters or anything like that you implement?
Yes, you know, the kids, they schedule, they call my assistant now and they schedule mom and daughter time. They get it on the schedule, which is really cute. But, yeah, you know, like we do family night and we watch movies together. And, you know, you'd think that as busy of a life as Grant and I have, that the kids suffer and take a toll, but they really don't. I have enough help around us so that when I'm home, I can be with the kids because somebody else is doing the dishes or somebody else is cooking the food. So then we have a little trampoline. So I can be on the trampoline bouncing with the kids and I get 30, 45 minutes of quality time with them. That's good. Like I don't need to spend hours with the children. They don't at a time, you know, to somehow be glorified as mom of the year. I need to put in the fun, the great time, the quality time. And then I get to go do something else. And then I can pop in and pop out. So we're always together. They're homeschooled. So even when I'm working from my office at home, like I might not be able to focus on them, but when I'm taking a break, getting lunch, they're there. So it always feels like they're around, like they're part of the group. When we travel on the road, they're always with us. So I don't think they feel like they're suffering. At nighttime, I try to put in more nighttime, you know, and it's a sacrifice because I have all these business things that I got to catch up on. But I just make the decision right now. I know I need to put in family time. I'm a mother. And if I'm going to go say and lead the charge for women and say, I want to restore the family dynamic, I got to hold myself accountable and show up and be a good representation of a mother.
Yeah.
At the same side, I don't have to feel guilty when my children think, you know, they think I should cook for them and that represents a good mother to them. Then I have the conversation. I'm like, if y'all want to judge me and say I ruined your life because I'm not going to cook for you, that's your decision. You're going to get all these other things that I can do and be amazing, but I'm not going to cook for you every night. But if you want, we can pick one night a week where y'all get a recipe, order the stuff and we cook together. I'll give you that. You know what I mean? So it's about finding the thing that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this framework as well, just because it seems like there's a lot of parents and entrepreneurial parents out there who use their lack of success and drive in their business, and they use their kids almost as a crutch or as an excuse as to why their business isn't doing really well, or why they're not reaching as many people or impacting as many lives, or why they're not reaching their mission or their calling. And it's they kind of put it off on like, well, you know, I'm a parent and I have kids, and so I have all these other responsibilities, and so I can't do that and I can't do this. And this framework kind of pulls you out of that and gets you back into what I think is a higher calling in parenting, which is setting an example that your kids can follow. And it's really interesting to me how we as parents can sometimes look at our kids and be like, you can do anything that you put your mind to. You can do anything. You can, you know, we want our kids to live their dream life. And yet we limit ourselves because of our kids and prevent ourselves from living our dream life or reaching our goals or accomplishing what we set out to accomplish. And it's all under the guise or the excuse of, well, I'm a parent, so I just can't.
It is an excuse. And Grant and I heard earlier on, when our children were really young, we heard somebody making an excuse like that they have kids and they blamed it on the kids. And Grant and I said, we're going to put in a policy that we are never blaming our kids for something that we don't want to take responsibility for.
Yeah.
Like, how unfair is that? Like, the kid can't even defend himself and you're blaming a problem on a child, especially if he catches wind that you blamed the problem. Like, how would you feel as a child if you overheard your parents say, I can't because my kid? Like, how worthless would you feel, or guilty, or like, oh, I'm a burden? Like, why would you want to do that to a child?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of perception. It's like, no, if I'm not going to do something, own up to it. But I'm not going to blame my child for my shortcomings. Like, be real and honest. Like, you at least owe that to your family. I agree with you 1,000,000%. And you know what? I'll go one step further. Like, why are you in a situation where your kids are your excuse to holding you back? Why aren't they your motivation for going further and being better and more?